Hi and welcome to another episode of Startup Stories, where I interview the best and brightest startup founders and experts so you can be ahead of the curve with your own startup venture. This episode brings us together with Alex Balderstone from AGORA, a virtual startup launcher providing all the necessary tools for entrepreneurs, no matter the stage of their journey. Starting your own venture can be a very scary project with many unknowns. How do you find the idea for your startup? How can you make sure not to make too many mistakes and fail? Where can you get support in form of advice and money? These and many more questions go through the heads of every aspiring startup founder, and they are one of the reasons Alex started AGORA. His goal is to offer a one-stop shop for early-stage ventures where aspiring and active entrepreneurs can go and get the support they need. In this episode, we dive into the story of AGORA, their target audience, how AGORA is different from other platforms, as well as more personal topics like the importance of mindset for entrepreneurs and what Alex did especially well and not so well while working on AGORA. Having Alex on the show was a delight, and I learned a lot from our conversation, which is why I'm super excited to share this conversation with all of you today. Enjoy! All right. Alex, thanks so much for joining the podcast and taking the time.
Of course, looking forward to it.
I really appreciate it, especially because we're going to talk about a topic that I'm really interested in, and it's pushing entrepreneurship forward. It's supporting aspiring entrepreneurs. So maybe we jump right in, and you can tell us, a little bit about yourself and the idea behind your startup.
Yeah, absolutely. It probably helps always to give a bit of context. So I'm from the UK. I'm just finishing off Warwick University. I study international business at the moment. Studied law for a year. Wasn't a big fan of it, and then transferred to a new 4-year course, which had a year of exchange at HEC Paris last year. About 3 years ago, I started one of the largest student conferences in the UK called Warwick Congress, which was the first multidisciplinary conference in the UK. Basically because I thought there weren't any, in fact, conferences in the UK that allowed students to essentially take current affairs and look at them from multiple perspectives, which is what we did. I was then on exchange, as I mentioned, at HEC last year. So, started to get involved. You go to things like Viva Tech, you get involved with Station F. I was involved a little bit on an ICO project, which sort of changed my perspectives a little bit. And then it was around September last year. I started my current startup, which is called AGORA. It's essentially what we call a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs. I set out with one of my co-founders who used to run the first student-run incubator in the UK. And essentially, from that, we came together, and when, we didn't think there was a good enough online environment available for entrepreneurs and SMEs, and even, large demographic of sort of B2B and B2C players, not, being able to get the key essential resources to start their business off the ground. So, from that, we built a team of about 12 around it, just through various projects I've done over the last few years. And essentially, we're in the midst of getting our first platform out for the end of this month. We're doing our first fundraising round this June, and it revolves around a number of, products on the inside, predominantly. At the moment, we're working on external product and service providers, so all the essential resources that are needed. In the long term, we want to integrate those into our platform in a workspace through APIs, an online sort of curriculum, and our own sort of startup essentials course, and then a community platform. And then in the future, we're sort of looking to, funding, mentoring, and sort of other related services.
Yeah. So really, the vision is
broad.
Really,
yeah, it's
one-stop
broad.
shop.
Yeah,
it's
pretty much.
Very broad. Yeah.
Yeah, we got it down to one line now. So,
yeah, that's good. It's a broad vision, which is really nice to hear as an entrepreneur. That's going to be the platform where I can go to and get everything I need.
That's the aim.
What's the business model behind AGORA? So I saw online you're gonna offer a free sign up, and then there's going to be multiple plans that you offer. Is that going to be the business model? So the entrepreneurs pay a monthly fee?
Yeah, so predominantly it works around a freemium model. When we started off, you immediately go very B2C. So, you look at, you think, right, in terms of scale, it's going to be the easiest to go to that. And then essentially we've got some advisory support about a month ago now, saying that your focus needs to be on the B2B, which we were as well at the same time. But I think we shifted a little bit more towards that. So what does that mean in essence? Our four main channel strategies at the end of the day look at existing co-workings, incubators, and accelerators, corporate innovation programs that are coming up, and then sort of university enterprise programs, sort of the educational sphere. So essentially a freemium model working on group license subscriptions as well, whereby we then look at our services and then we essentially aggregate them into the free and premium offering, and provide that on a license basis to those institutions. Obviously, you've got to look at there's a lot in the UK, which is obviously our first market. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think there's about 400 incubators and accelerators in the UK. And you do find a lot of them close at the end of the day. It's a big number. I may have that wrong, but I think it's about that. But the thing is, because there are so many, you have a lot of smaller ones as well, which just are so small that they don't have these resources, and that's why they're shutting. And you've got a lot of university innovation programs that are just coming out in the UK. I mean, you've got some good ones like Imperial, LBS have a launch pad, but the further probably north you go, these are just starting to come out of the woodwork. So again, they're quite a prime sort of target in that sense. So yeah, I mean, it straddles between B2B and B2C in the freemium distinction.
Yeah. How did you? I mean, you came up with the idea. How did you test that there were people with a need for that or such a need that they would pay you? And that's B2C is one question, and then B2B as well. How did you test that?
I think that's always an ongoing thing, and I think the thing is, because we've got such a broad model, you're always refining, and that comes along with some conversations that we're having with a few fairly large organisations at the moment in terms of looking at the sphere of are there parts of our platform they want to work on developing with us, if that makes sense. So a lot of it originally came through a lot of advisory support from, I suppose, some relatively big players in the industry, and helping us to refine from day one, which was sort of at the end of last year. And then it's really just going out there, having a lot of conversations with people. You've got to be at the grassroots level. So I'm involved in a project in Birmingham at the moment, which is creating a sort of new co-working acceleration space to aggregate the universities up there, and you start to understand it even through our own sort of experience as well, what's there. So you talk with existing incubators and accelerators, a lot of smaller ones, you talk to a lot of the bigger ones, and a lot of people will go, well, this doesn't work inevitably, because the way it works is WeWork has its own products and services store. So you immediately think if you're in WeWork, you've got everything there, and that's what they're trying to build as a lifestyle brand. But once you start talking a lot more down the food chain, I suppose, you realize a lot of things are really not there. And for some people, access to finance is it may seem easy if you've got the right networks, but realistically in the UK, I think about 90% of the financing is down in the southeast of London. So if you're outside of there, it's not easy. So I'm from the southeast, so I may see it in one perspective, but like if I go to Birmingham, it's a different world. But it was basically through talking a lot of the grassroots level, a lot of the current organisations there as well, and as I say, it's a continuously changing piece. As we sort of rinse and repeat, I suppose.
So you had that idea. You talked to a lot of people. What? Because a lot of people I talk to that are thinking about an idea they have, they don't know what to do next. So what were your first steps that you took after you decided, okay, we want to do something in this space?
Well, that's the thing. You have a lot of information, and usually too much of it. And the way that this distinction works is the whole all of our products are decentralized. So if you want to do your funding, you'll go to one provider. Mentoring's the same. And if you have more specific services, if you're a more developed organization, you may go to something like Upwork for freelancing at the end of the day, or a course on Skillshare, for example. So in terms of what we thought were the essential services, that came a lot again with the talking, and I think it's very hard for us to say you get your MVP out in the MVP can be a lot of things. If you're looking at Uber, it could be just clarifying the situation that I think I heard that they were standing at a taxi rank when it started off, for example, and they were just getting feedback essentially on, would you like to take a chauffeur-driven car, basically. For us, with such a big product range, it took probably a lot longer in terms of product development to bring out the one. But it was talking to a lot of people in terms of what they wanted, and you can't. I think for us, you can't build a funding platform into something like this, which is entirely community driven, unless you've got your three basic services there, which is when we went, those three that I outlined earlier were the essentials that we needed there to build up the base of essential resources of what we thought essential first.
So we talked a little bit about being at university and starting out.
Yeah.
So you mentioned to me that you bootstrapped. How did your life look like during that phase?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think some good training for that came from running the Congress, from the Warwick Congress, 3 years ago. Again, that became essentially one of the largest student teams in the country of 70 people that I was running. And that was all run independently. So, we had to get lawyers on for that, accountants, insurers, the whole shebang. So, that was essentially good training. Bootstrapping for Agora wasn't, I wouldn't say necessarily something that was entirely new to me. Especially because we had traction, fortunately, with wider network and what we were trying to do, etc., etc. And it wasn't just one person running it. But when you study business, I mean, I think more in the EU, it's more intense than what you'd be doing in the UK. But you have a lot of flexibility in your time, and the approach in the UK is more research driven, as opposed to at least from my experience, from what I've seen in EU unis and HEC last year. You have a lot more modules and a lot more practical work. You don't have that in the UK. Yes, you do have practical work, but there's less of it. So you get given the time to run what you want, if you may, as and how you want. So there's a lot of flexibility there to essentially work off your wider network as well, which is what I think Warwick's helped with greatly.
Yeah, and I mean, being at uni, as you said, you have the time and minimal risk, really.
It's the best time to do anything, really.
Yeah.
I mean, uni is an interesting thing because it's two sides of the spectrum. On one side, and I've heard this in I think some of your interviews, and lots of other, lots of people say it. When you go to, I suppose St. Gallen or you go to Warwick, it's very business orientated in the sense of your only route could be become a lawyer, consultant, or banker. Yes, there are others around that, but it gets you into a mindset whereby, I suppose, and I don't say this in a negative fashion because I think it works for a lot of people, but you don't look at what's out there, or you don't test your perception because you're used to being told what's going to happen. And that's what business schools are at the end of the day. They are businesses. They're selling a brand. On the other side, it's when you start, when we started off the Congress, you start getting into, we started fortunately getting into a lot of, I suppose, senior meetings very quickly, which started essentially testing you in terms of what was possible. And, from there, we accounted every single, you set up one of the largest student things in the UK, you encounter every single problem that you can imagine. So, legal issues, you've got to become a lawyer overnight. At some point, getting speakers on board. And it's the same with Agora in terms of, things, from the beginning in terms of, looking for financing for June and keeping everything open. It's great. But then, when we've got a team spread out in, sort of 5-6 countries, and time zones is an issue. It's, it's just something you learn to live with.
Yeah. It's. I also worked in a,
which you'll respect as well, won't you? Because same boat, isn't it? So.
I also worked in a student association, organizing events and all that, and it really, I mean, yours is on a much bigger scale, but I can really see how it helps you. Well, you're faced with problems early on, and you learn how to deal with them. It's just like a startup, but you have no financial risk, really. Or that was at least for me.
Yeah, sometimes you don't have the sponsorship as well.
Exactly. Yeah, if you don't have the
sponsorship. That's the interesting
thing. That's true. We're jumping a bit around with the topics, but I wanted to, because you were mentioning the mindset. That's really important, and that can be, and it was for me as well, because I was at the business university, and as you said, the trajectory was consultant, banker. And everything else was a bit special. So how do you get into the entrepreneur mindset in such an environment? Because it's crucial to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, you've got to take countries differently on this. I mean, if you're in Switzerland and you come across things like Start or ETH Entrepreneurs Club, and the various fantastic projects that at least I've come across there, you're in a very good place to start it. And I think Switzerland's very prone at the moment, especially in Zug with in the crypto valley and everything like that, to starting a lot of things from scratch and seeing how it goes. UK is different. I mean, how can you get into entrepreneurship? I think it's a mind game. I think you've just really got to jump in the deep end and see how you do yourself. You've in terms of learning, yes, there's a lot of resources out there, but it's really about just starting something and failing a few times. And I think the biggest thing is you've got you're talking about mindset. You've got to adapt your mindset to just accepting failure as part of your your day-to-day life. If you don't accept that, or you don't learn from that, it's going to become very hard. So I'd say the thick and fast about it is it's about practicality. It's about working on projects yourself and understanding what is and what isn't possible, because the basic skills that uni doesn't teach you, managing a team,
It really
relationship no relationship management, with senior people, common sense. Okay, a university brochure may sell that to you, but it really, at least 5 years of doing bachelor's degrees, I can tell you in the UK that doesn't happen, and I've seen that. It's about jumping 2 feet in. Gary Vaynerchuk is, I think, he's not a good example of this case. He says, but a lot of what he says is very true about this. Yeah, okay, it may be over the top a little bit sometimes, but it really is. It is really. Yeah, the guy's got a content machine of 5 people working on what he's producing all the time. But apparently, what I've been told. But you've got to jump in the deep end. You've got to fail. Even if you just got to accept that you don't need the necessities of all the nice things in life that a good salary may bring you. If you can live basically and you can try things, that's where you're going to get happiness from, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. It's really just doing it and
exactly. Nike say it, just do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I have one more question regarding Agora that popped up, and you probably have an answer for it. So you offer content, you offer services, you offer the community. I was looking at the website and I thought, okay, but can't I mean, and you mentioned it before, you can get it somewhere else. You can get contents everywhere right now. The communities, you could go into LinkedIn groups or Facebook groups. What's the special thing about Agora that's going to make it better than all these services and contents and communities that are separated?
So the USP quite simply is that we bring everything together. So the simple fast problem is, at the end of the day, people just don't know where to go. That's the issue, and that's the point about bringing the brand together to make to essentially aggregate all those services and to have that community effect whereby over time you move through. So yes, there are other platforms that you could say, there's a big one in the US called startups.co, for instance, which I think has about 1 million users, and it's a good resource. But when you look at it, a lot of those services have been bought over time. So at least from what I could be wrong, but I've been into the platform, and at least from what I've seen, there's no overarching, you pay a subscription, but there's no overarching framework between, I think there's about 5-6, individual products on there as well. So, we're not saying, for example, a long-term course, we're not saying, we're going to build that up to be the best in the world, but what we are doing are essentially having conversations with a lot of relevant people, with each of these individual products to make that, the go-to place, and essentially bring, what other external partners could improve with us together at the same time. So, if you don't know, it's where you will then know where to go for what you need to do to productize your business.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge value to have a trusted source to get different products from. I'm
see, that's the word. Yeah, trust is the word of the matter in terms of what you got to do to go out there. And I think we're not trying to replace in some ways some would say we're trying to replace an incubator or accelerator, but physically that's very hard to do when you're not using a co-working space. So, part of our program is, we're going out there from May, June, to do a lot of, demo days in cities as well. So what we are doing are, in the UK, a lot of regional locations, and in major EU cities, we go into a main location, we work with our partners that we built up over the last few years. We do something like a fireside chat and then sort of demo day style event, with some, proof of concept funding, and, bring in some investors as well to essentially, aggregate the community to, show we're out there as well, physically.
Definitely. What's the as an entrepreneur? What's the first, maybe I don't know if we call it MVP, but the first product I'm going to see as soon as you launch? Because you're going to launch end of this month, or
that's the plan. Yeah, that's the plan.
What's the first thing I'm going to see?
So you'll see the first version of our Startup Essentials course in line with a curriculum that we've built. And then, so we've got about 15 partners at the moment on the product and services side. So, things like banking providers, insurtech, expense management, sort of more essential services that you need there. We've got roughly 15 partners through that. And then the community-driven platform to an extent on there as well. And then in terms of what we do with the future of that, that's when we can start looking at all the refinement around the funding round. And then, our main thing sits around, the funding, platform in the future. And the main premise of that is, we're looking to be a place whereby the community have the option to finance at the same time. But equally, when you've got your startups on it at the same time, we can aggregate all of our partners. And, for example, a lot of corporate innovation programs who, if they're doing lots of small amounts of investment at the same time, especially in the pre-seed demographic that we're very much looking at the beginning, and ideation, that will help productize a lot of other players on the system. Yes, you've got matching algorithms and everything you need on that as well, but that's where the value will be working across.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Nice. So I asked you before the actual interview, I asked you a few questions on a survey. I just wanted to talk about some of the points because I think it's very interesting for listeners and entrepreneurs. Based on your experience, what would you say is one thing that you did really well working on your startup, and that that others should try to emulate?
I think you've just got to do things. I think a lot of people get bogged down at the end of the days of waiting. That's probably just from something I've learned through the Congress. You've just got to learn to do things, and so just go ahead with building stuff. I think what you have at the end of the day is, especially what you learn at university, you have a lot of tech people who build apps, but then forget the whole business side. Then on the other side, you have a lot of business students who want to start something, but then don't know how to build the tech. And a big issue is bringing the two together. So at least from what I've always tried to do, my background's obviously much more businessy than anything tech related, is just look at everything and think everything will fit into place at the end of the day. So be that legalities, be that product side, be that partnerships. I think there's a huge amount of everything. You could say there's 20 different things, categories of things you got to do at the end of the day. You've just got to go ahead with all of them and try and balance them as much as possible.
Yes, totally. You can.
Yes, it's a scary thought, isn't it? It's a scary thought, but it's
yeah, but you can die planning. You can.
Well, exactly. If you don't get out
Exactly.
there, yeah. I mean, yeah.
So we got the good side. What's one thing you did really badly while working on your startup, and you would say, just don't repeat that?
I think that again, that's probably the product side. I think because my background is much more businessy. I think and because our model is so broad, you can often forget the fundamentals of what you want to bring out. So look, we've had lots of conversations with lots of different people in terms of what you can build and what needs to be in it. And I think because the product range is so large at the end of the day, you can almost forget of what you're trying to get out there. But I think I wouldn't repeat that again. As being a big thing. Most of the people on our team do products or components anyway. But I think what I would say against that is because we're quite a hybrid model. So you could look at it as a sort of virtual incubator and a startup at the same time. I think you're always thinking you've got to build up enough traction to want someone to be able to advise and essentially invest in you. And if you haven't got that traction, fine. yes, it's not the US, and investment's not a lot more ready and fast over there than it is in the EU. But there are some people over here that even in the early days will come in with you if you've got the right business mindset and traction behind you.
Yeah. So focus, you would say, would be the word.
Yeah. I mean, but then that's something you're learning for the next 50 years. So I don't think there's a full stop.
Yeah. It's rare to be really good at that early on. But I once talked to someone else, and he said you should really focus so hard on something really specific that it kind of gets uncomfortably niche. Like nobody would want that. So I thought that was an interesting take also, to just for the beginning really focus on.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm actually looking as we speak at something that Start Global posted, a guy called Frank Thelen, who spoke, I believe, and it says, "Focus on your product, team, long-term values, and luck will find you." And I couldn't agree with that anymore.
I read that as well this morning.
Yeah, exactly. I think that is a very good, and if you try and put the right building blocks in place at the end of the day, yes. I think my opinion is of the matter. It's about going to events. If you want to meet investors, if you want to create traction, if you want to get advisors, if you want to get your first customers for events. I think a lot of people in the UK just at least in the university context, just sit at university and they don't go out there. And I appreciate that's not the easiest thing if you're not studying in London, where most of the activity is. But we're just not comfortable enough to go out there, say, "Hi, I'm this person, I'm doing this." It'd be great to have a follow-up chat, or go to another event, or collaborate on something. You just don't know. And that's when you increase your chances for luck. And that's how a lot of these things happen at the end of the day. It's sort of encounters you just don't expect. But
I totally agree with that. We were at Start Summit as well at this time, and I met so many people I didn't know that just really openly gave me feedback on what we're working on, and gave me their email address to follow up and give me additional feedback, maybe in a month or so.
People are willing. People, I think, at least over here, a lot of people are very, I think they think, "Oh, nothing's going to happen. What's the point?" And, but, people do care. Most people out there are good. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of, we all get a load of emails and replies, or, no replies, in fact, or no replies to messages whereby people don't want to support you. But, if you ask the right people at the end of the day, you will get, somewhere.
Definitely. My last question that I always ask my guests is, what's the last piece of content, be it a book or a podcast or a blog post or whatever, that you consumed and that you would recommend to entrepreneurs?
Ironically, I probably should have read this a long time ago, but I haven't because I'm in the middle of it at the moment. But I think The Lean Startup, in terms of a book, is summarizes a lot of the I suppose specific issues that I've gone through before, and probably should have read a bit earlier. And I think it's a very good place to start in terms of what you're looking at. I'm not a big believer of you can read, you can learn through reading, if that makes sense, or learn through doing. But you've got to understand the fundamentals, which come through books like that. But also a big thing is just content. You've got to be out there, and you don't always have to be physically at events to learn what's the right thing to do and how to move on with things. But if you sign up for things like TechCrunch, you at least get an idea of how markets move. You can see podcasts, even like this. It's once you get more comfortable with content, sometimes you can get more comfortable actually going out there and trying something. But if you're not listening at all, if you're not trying to at least change your mindset, that's very hard to do.
I do have to say I just love reading books, but it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't work if you just read them. So what I try to do is I look at the challenges that I have right now, and I try to find some piece of content, be it a book or a podcast, that talks about that, and I try to see what other people did well and what they did not so well to kind of improve my chances, for my own decisions in that challenge.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things people have to find what's comfortable for them because, I mean, for me, I didn't like law. I mean, I still like law practically. I like, doing it and, working with, lawyers when we've got to do stuff, but that's practical, reading, hundreds of pages every week is not what I consider, learning. So, that doesn't work always, for me, but I do like reading a lot online. But that's a different form of it. But yeah, I mean, you just got to find your right, comfortable way of doing things. If you don't, you're just going to be, going between a lot of different, mediums.
Yeah, and I think at the end it comes down to the mindset of being open to learn, and be that through books. So it's a mixture, anyways. Be that books, videos, doing it, which is the best teacher. So I think it really comes down to that mindset.
Absolutely.
All right, Alex, that was it. Thank you so much for taking the time and being on our show.
Great. No, really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. Thanks a lot. And, look forward to hearing all the others that are going to be coming out.
Thank you. And all the best for you and Agora.
Take care.
That was it. Thank you for listening to another episode of Startup Stories. Make sure to check out the show notes with additional links at nerdentrepreneurs.com. And if you like our podcast, leave a review on iTunes. See you on Monday.